do that. And then I'm going to ask, can everybody see my screen? Even if you want to type in chat, that's great. Or if you just want to pop in and say yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Or thumbs up. Yes. Thank you. Great. All right. So we're talking about seasonal affective disorder today. And I'm really excited to be speaking with you all about this today. Not that it's some wonderful topic as far as positive and uplifting. Hopefully along the way, we'll give you some positive and uplifting things to be able to cope with it. But because it's so important, one of the things that we know now in the healthcare field is that, especially in the Pacific Northwest, above the 45th parallel, and we are right on that, that's Salem, so we're not far off. The 45th parallel, we don't get enough of the right kind of light to be able to feel our best all year long. So seasonal affective disorder is a really, really important topic to be covering. All right. I would say, just kind of a little bit of housekeeping to begin with here. If you have questions, please feel free to stop me at any moment in time. You can type them into the chat. I will be checking my chat occasionally. If you have any ideas about anything, please feel free to kind of pipe in with those too. All right. So again, my name is Stephanie Evans-Wondra, and I am a counselor here at Cascade Health. Our little specific department here is called Cascade Counseling and EAP, which might be different than what you've heard before. We did do a name change pretty recently. So we see lots of people with seasonal affective disorder, which is oftentimes referred to as S.A.D. We are kind of right in the thick of it right now for people. Kind of February into beginning of March is really, really difficult for a lot of people. It's kind of the grayest time of our year. Usually kind of somewhere in January, we get this little reprieve. We call it false spring, right? Fool's spring. And so it kind of picks people up for a couple of weeks, and then boom, February hits and people, it's really difficult. Holidays are over, and regardless of the fact that holidays are stressful for a lot of people, there's not anything much to look forward to typically. And so that makes it even worse. So let's talk about how do we deal with this. We're going to cover some things today, such as symptoms, coping strategies, and then treatment options. Those look a little different. All right. So, S.A.D, seasonal affective disorder. Affective, I'm going to cover this really quick, is our affect, right? How we are oftentimes perceived by other people. Kind of flat affect, not having a lot of emotion, right? So we're talking about seasonal affective disorder, how the seasons affect us, how we are, how we behave in that. Okay, so this is depression. However, it looks a little bit different. There's really a cyclical pattern to this. Oftentimes, it might start off kind of in the fall with the knowledge, right, that those cold, dark days are coming. It may be a piece of what makes holidays more difficult for people, along with, myriad other reasons. Some people refer to it as winter blues, winter depression. Lots of people experience this. So if you are somebody in our space today who experiences this, or knows or loves somebody who experiences this, you are not alone in your boat. It is very, very prevalent, especially within the kind of 40th to 45th and up parallels of the world. And we'll talk about why that is. So 35 million Americans have symptoms of SAD, but more than 10 million have severe symptoms that really need treatment. This can get pretty severe for people. So we'll talk about treatment kind of at the end. All right. We've got several common kinds of symptoms that appear in the winter, but not in the other seasons. So I talked about people kind of experiencing this beginning in the fall, late fall. And then we're talking about kind of coming out of it in early spring. All right. So October or November, it's kind of that slide into depression, recognizing, oh my gosh, here it comes. Things are going to get dark. I have noticed that for lots of people, it actually kind of correlates with when we spring forward or fall back, right? Okay, so falling back is in the fall, right? And we're setting our clocks back, and that darkness really, really affects people. And then I think it's maybe next weekend, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after, that we spring forward. And people are like, oh, golly, here it comes. Here comes the light, right? So that seems to be a piece of this. Symptoms occur cyclically, like I said. It doesn't have to happen every year, but more often than not, okay? And then when we start talking about what this looks like, we start talking about an increased need for sleep or altered sleeping patterns. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be an increased need for sleep. Lots of people, that's how it affects them. They just want to stay in bed, right? We just want to hibernate. Keep the windows closed, just hunker down, right? Nothing sounds fun. Or it could look a lot like not being able to go to sleep at night. And we'll talk again about kind of why that might be happening. So with that, of course, comes a difficulty in functioning, difficulty getting up in the morning, getting going. People feel like they're dragging. That fatigue and lethargy piece is really, really strong for people who experience SAD. We've got sadness. People might be more teary. I remember I've had 3 children. And so I remember being pregnant and like watching a commercial and you just cry at the drop of a hat, right? For any of you who might have been there. This is actually not a lot different when you're experiencing SAD. You may be crying for, at a commercial. You might be crying because something happened that absolutely like rocks your world. And it might be happening at times when you don't feel like it should be happening or where you don't feel like it's appropriate. That can be a piece of SAD. You might have some apathy. Again, it's kind of that hunkering down, not feeling like you want to do anything, just kind of meh. Or you could be experiencing some anger and irritability. If you find yourself more irritable than usual, or your loved one is more irritable during the kind of longer, darker days, that could be a piece of this too. So when we're talking about depression, we're really talking about 5 symptoms, okay? So that's that sadness and kind of teariness, anger and irritability, loss of interest in things, sleep changes, and then eating changes. Now, for depression to be an issue, those 5 things need to be on board for more than 2 weeks, okay? So that's regular depression, all right? Seasonal affective disorder is when those things are happening, but they're happening in a cyclical pattern and they're happening for 2 or more weeks. All right. I want people to be really, really careful about how they're using their words. When we talk about, I'm so depressed, we can then actually, our brain really listens to what we're saying. So if we're saying those kinds of things over and over again, and we're not experiencing those 5 things, we can actually move ourselves into experiencing those 5 things, right? We keep telling ourselves we're so depressed. We're like, oh, now I just don't want to move. I'm just so depressed, right? And it's just kind of this cascading effect. So not that, that's going to be the whole piece of it. It's a piece of it. And so I want people to be very careful about their language. All right. Okay. That food piece, increased appetite and weight gain. Food plays a massive part in our kind of homeostasis. When we are eating increased carbohydrates, this is why I put donuts on this thing, on this slide. When we're eating increased carbohydrates, that is feeding our bad gut bacteria. This is what I did my master's thesis on, folks. So, the gut-brain axis, how our food interplays with our mind. When we are having increased sugar, increased alcohol, because it turns to sugar in our bodies, and increased carbohydrates, so we're talking things like white breads, kind of empty calories, right? Those kinds of things, soda pop, those kinds of things are feeding the bad gut bacteria in our microbiome. Your microbiome plays an imperative role in how your brain functions. You make neurotransmitters in your gut. Your immune system is guarded by your gut. So how we think is often a piece of what's happening with our microbiome. When we are craving sugars, when we are craving starches, which tends to happen more in winters, then we are feeding our bad gut bacteria. That's not going to actually help our mental health. So I want people to be aware of that and be careful of that. I really like Michael Pollan's adage about food. He says, eat real food. So not processed, not junk food, right? Eat real food, not too much. So don't overeat, and mostly plants. Okay. So that doesn't mean that we can't have meat. It doesn't mean we can't have cheese. It doesn't mean, you can't enjoy the good stuff here and there. Simply feeding your gut with that mostly plants piece is going to help. We can actually, if we feed somebody a really good diet for about 3 days, they might be in kind of a bad spot as far as like irritability in those 3 days, because they're detoxing off of all the sugar. But after those 3 days, people often say increased energy, feeling better, better mood, better able to think, and their increased positive thoughts, all that kind of stuff. So food plays a massive role. So if we're doing the opposite kinds of things of what we need to be doing with our diet, then it's very difficult to have pretty good mental health. Now, all of that being said, I recognize that it's more expensive to eat in a way that's more healthy. It is definitely a privilege in our society. And so I do want to be cognizant of that not everybody can access great food. So that's also something to be aware of. Decreased physical activity is something that people kind of run up against, and that reluctance to be physically active. That really also, again, kind of going back to the food, when we're feeding ourselves a poor diet, then we don't have the energy to be able to move our bodies. When we're hunkering down, when we're not letting the light in, we don't have a lot of want or willpower or motivation to move our bodies. It's very easy then to sit and scroll social media or binge watch television. And those things are not also they're not going to add to our life. So being careful about that too. Increased sensitivity to social rejection. Again, when we're kind of in this dark spot, right? That's when we begin to take things really personally. And that is really problematic. Most things are not personal. They may feel personal to us, but they are not. If I walk down the street and one of my friends is walking on the other side of the street and I wave at them and they don't see me, I really then get to decide what that story is going to be in my head, right? I could think, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've made that person angry, and I could just blow it out of proportion and like get really anxious about it, right? Or I could say, well, maybe they were up in their head about something and they just didn't see me. Or, oh, it looks like they don't have their glasses on. They probably didn't see me, right? And then I get to decide how I'm going to feel about that, right? If I go with anxious and overly concerned about what might have happened previously, I'm not going to feel good. If I go with, oh, they just didn't see me, I'm certainly going to feel better about that and then carry on through my day. So that's really difficult, though, when we're not feeding ourselves well, when we're not sleeping well, when we're not moving our bodies. I'm going to check in here on my chat. It's a big one. Yeah, definitely. Food is, I saw that pop earlier, so I'm assuming that you're talking about food. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But yeah, food is a huge thing for people. It's such a loaded issue. I could do a whole talk on food. But the more that we can be aware of what we're putting in our faces, eating the rainbow, right? The more that we can be aware of what we're, I don't feel good, so I eat things that perpetuate the feelings. Yep. Really, really common. So if you get to that point, right, where you're not feeling good, let's talk about that for a second, because you are not alone in this boat. If you get to a spot where you're not feeling good, if you can have, and I say if because it's not easy, we're talking about simple things versus easy things. Those are two very different things. Simply, we know if we feed ourselves better, we feel better, right? That's not easy. So if we can take a breath, take a beat, and recognize, okay, if I feed myself something that's healthy right now, I know I'm actually going to feel better. It's very easy to get sucked into, I feel horrible right now. I want a bagel loaded with all of the strawberry cream cheese that's full of sugar that I can get, right? I get it. Or the cookies or the cakes or whatever else it is. But that is actually feeding the bad bacteria within our microbiome, and we're going to feel worse. Okay. It's, like I said, simple and easy, not the same thing. And then we have avoidance of social situations. One of the things that we know, lots of people have been talking over the past probably 10 years about blue zones. This is where people live to be over 100 typically. And there are a few places on Earth. They have an increased number of people who live to be over 100. One of the things that we know that happens in blue zones is a really tight-knit community. For most people, even introverts, if they know that they have a tight-knit community, they have a social structure, they're feeling better. In our world, you know, social media has kind of tried to take that piece over. It doesn't work really well. Most people find that they're then comparing themselves to other people. That's not great for our mental health. And so getting together with people in real time is the best thing that we can do as far as that community building aspect. But seasonal affective disorder pulls people out of that because, again, you just kind of want to hunker down and you don't want to go anywhere and you don't want to do anything. All right. Any questions about what S.A.D looks like? Okay. Let's move on. Let's talk about what causes S.A.D. Okay. Again, we're talking about where we are on the surface of the world, right? So we have shorter days and lack of sunlight. We're also in the Pacific Northwest. We get lots of rain. And so, you know, to our eyes, to the human eye, we look outside, we think, gosh, it's cloudy out there. It's not sunny. I'm not going outside. The deal with that is far more sunlight comes through those clouds than we register. So going outside, we look at it and we go, I don't want to go out in that, right? We'll get to how we can combat that. But that's kind of the thinking. We see the clouds, we're like, don't want to go out in that. That brings us inside even more, which means less light, even less light, okay? And your internal body clock runs on light. So when we're getting less light, we're not going to sleep at night. And the other piece of that too is that oftentimes what we're doing involves a screen. And so we're getting even more blue light, which messes with our circadian rhythm even more, all right? Blue light out in nature shows up most between 7 and 10 a.m. in the morning. Those are kind of your optimal blue light times. So if you can get that, and we'll talk about that next, if you can get more of that, it's going to help that internal body clock. Our brains make melatonin. That production actually starts behind your eyes. And so if you're staring at screens all day, the blue light is actually blocking that production of melatonin. Our melatonin actually is highest in the morning, which is kind of weird. You would think it would be highest at night to help us go to sleep. It's actually highest in the morning so that we are up and awake, and that resets our body clock. But when we start to get that all wonky, then it makes it really difficult to go to sleep. And then when you're affecting your sleep cycles, right, you can't go to sleep at what would be kind of a healthy time, which is actually before midnight. Then your body's not making melatonin in the right ways because you're blocking the light. It's all very much a process, very much a cycle. And so when we begin to mess with that cycle with less light in the morning, then we don't get as good sleep. So when we're not getting as much sleep as we need, that can also affect depression. And going, like I said, not going outside compounds the situation. So, and I already spoke to that S.A.D is more common in northern geographic areas. I spoke to a doctor once, and this was, gosh, when I was in grad school. I was a doctor over in Florence. I used to live over there. And he said he puts all of his patients on vitamin D. That is not like, don't run out and buy vitamin D. Speak to your doctor if you think that that's an issue for you, though. It's really, really difficult for most people in the Pacific Northwest to make enough vitamin D. And so that doctor was like, yeah, I put all of my patients on vitamin D. It plays a really integral part in our health. And we just don't get enough of it through the sunlight here. Okay, any other, I'm gonna pop back here. Any questions about what causes SAD? All right, so let's talk about coping with SAD. One effective piece of this puzzle is light therapy, and I want to talk about this for a little bit. Sometimes it's called phototherapy or bright light therapy. Now, phototherapy is used for a number of things, and I'll talk about that on my next slide. But you may hear that in a number of different areas. So I don't want you to get concerned if you hear that about something else. It is also used for seasonal affective disorder. This is exposure to bright light, like 10,000 lux light. That's really bright. I have one of these lights at home. I too deal with SAD. It works very well for me. Some people find that it works really well for them. Other people do not. So you kind of have to play around with it. Want to be using this in the early morning. I told you that out in nature between 7 and 10, that's if you can actually go outside between 7 and 10 in the morning for a half an hour, that's really, really helpful. I oftentimes tell people, like, if you can get up in the morning and make yourself a cup of coffee and go outside, you're winning. You've just started your day off in a way that is going to change your world, truly. I unfortunately also experienced some other health issues, and going outside makes it really, really, really cold for me. And then I'm in pain. So I don't go outside, but I do sit in front of my sliding glass door most mornings. That helps. But when I use my light, it helps even more. All right. So 30 minutes to 90 minutes during the day. And we call this a light box. And we'll show you some pictures of those. And if you're unsure about how to go about doing this, please, please, please speak to your doctor, or if you're seeing a counselor or a therapist, please speak to them, that they can help you too. All right. I want to call attention to this slide because, like I said earlier, it can treat a lot of different things, right? And so, you might hear it used in lots of different ways, and that's great. That's fine. But oftentimes what you see is this picture that's kind of right in the middle, where this person has their face in front of a light box. Please don't do that. That's not how this is to be used. That's actually damaging. You don't want to do that. Okay. And you'll see lots and lots of other photos of people having this light come at them, like pretty close or down here. And that's also not going to be as effective as it could be otherwise. This is actually what we want. We want a photo light coming down, like as the sun would be coming down, right? Most of this light then would be coming in through the tops of your corneas. So we don't want, you'll see lots of pictures actually where it's coming up at people. We want it coming down, like it would be mimicking regular sunlight, okay? So please know that that's an important piece of this. You don't want to be too close. You also don't want to be too far away. It's not as effective at far distances. Utilizing a good light box, and I've got some suggestions on that, and having it come down instead of up, or right at, and not being too close. So again, like I said, check with your healthcare provider if you want more information about this, and read and follow the directions, okay? Sunbox is one company that makes good lights. Northern Lights, Alaskan Northern Lights. Verilux is also really good. And you can even purchase things at Jerry's and Costco, okay? So I want to be clear, you can kind of get them all over the place. Make sure that you've got a good one. Do a little research, something that's going to work for you. They make them as floor lamps too. So if you have a reading chair, that you could have one next to a reading chair, and you can sit there. They make a plethora of them. Again, be wary of the ones that you like just sit on your desk and shine right at your face. That's not going to be the best use. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. All right. So let's talk about a lot of other things that we can do here. Okay. You know, there was an old adage, and I'm not exactly sure where it came from or when it kind of came about, but laughter is the best medicine. It's not untrue. Okay. So if you're somebody who feels like, gosh, I just don't really want to go anywhere and I'm just going to sit on my couch, putting on a show that's going to make you laugh, even if it's something that you know, that is great medicine. Okay. Being able to get silly. We have a 1-year-old dog in our house right now. We also have a 12-year-old dog in our house, but our 1-year-old dog is pretty hilarious. And so if I want a good laugh, if I want to get silly, all I need to do is start playing with her. And she's a German Shepherd, and her legs just kind of go all over the place. And so it makes me laugh pretty hysterically when I'm playing with her. So being able to get silly with your pets, get silly with friends, get silly with your partner. If you have children, get silly with your children. They will appreciate that. So being able to laugh and get silly lifts the mood. So if you can, and again, I recognize that this takes money and privilege to be able to escape to a sunny place. But if you can afford to do that, that oftentimes helps people to plan something in February or March. I think really that they were not wrong in planning spring break for people. That's associated with the schools and with teachers. And so then lots of parents take that time off, lots of spouses take that time off. If people can get to a sunny spot, that's great. And so here's the piece of that, though, that's important. It doesn't have to be a warm, sunny place. For many people, that's super helpful, but it doesn't have to be that. Even if you can get to a sunny place that's windy. So if you can go to the beach and it's sunny, that's great. If you don't like the wind, hunker down behind a dune or behind driftwood. But just being able to get out and feel that sun on your face is really important. And like I said earlier, so much of what comes through those clouds, we don't actually recognize as sunlight. So even if you can begin to take a walk at work, 20 minutes a day on your lunch break, maybe, if you get a 30-minute lunch break, that might be cutting things tight. But if you can get out on a 15-minute break in the morning and a 15-minute break in the afternoon, if you can just walk for 10 minutes of that break, that's fantastic. Being able to get out into that light is really, really imperative. Oftentimes, too, people find it really difficult, like I said, to kind of get out of the house. If you have a cause that you believe in, that makes it easier. So finding a cause that you believe in and being able to socialize around that cause, be involved, have something that's bigger than yourself, right? If you can find a cause that you care about, oftentimes that helps. Surrounding yourself with things that you associate with warmth and spring. During the winter months, I splurge for myself and I buy flowers because that really helps my mood. That reminds me spring is coming, right? If you can, in the fall, plant bulbs, then you have something to look forward to, right? You know that those bulbs are coming up in the spring. I have, so Hawaii is one of my favorite spots in the world. And I have a sign in my house that says something about Hawaii. And so, that reminds me that warmth is actually available. So yeah, flowers. Yes, thank you. Yep. Flowers just change the mood, for me anyway. So, but you have to find what that is for you. Letting the sun in. This is really, really important. It's very easy to drag yourself out of bed in the morning and then keep your blinds closed or keep your drapes closed. So if you get up and if you are somebody who does routine, I would encourage you to get out of bed, use the restroom, then come back, open your blinds or open your shades and make your bed. Here's why. You're letting that sunlight in, right? You're putting bright light into your space. And then you're also, even if it's just pulling the sheets up and not really making your bed, but just kind of pulling the sheets up, then that says to your body, we're not going back to that, right? That thing is made, it is done, okay? And it's just nice to come into a space that's clean. That's another thing, and I don't organize and update is on here, but I'm gonna also talk about when we have spaces that are messy and cluttered, it's oftentimes really difficult to feel good in those spaces. And so to be able to throw back those windows or the curtains or the blinds, whatever it is, and then make that bed in the morning really actually brightens your space. It makes it look more pulled together, tells your brain we're not going back to bed, and creates a nice space for people. Hosting a winter snow party. Heaven knows we've had a lot of that around here lately. But even if it's not snowing, it's like putting a party together where you're going to have a small bonfire in your backyard, if that's allowable where you live, or going to a city park and having a fire there if it's a space that has fire pits. It doesn't have to be at your house. That's what I'm saying. And so it could look like a whole bunch of friends getting together at a park, going out to Perkins Park Peninsula, where they do have those kinds of fire pits, enjoying time with family and friends, getting together, getting that socialization in, taking hot chocolate along. I would state that alcohol, while it is super tempting, I think, for people to rely on, it's a depressant. So when you're already feeling depressed, alcohol probably shouldn't be a go-to. So if you're trying to feel better, cutting back on alcohol is actually a better bet. So, hosting a winter snow party, maybe alcohol is not the central theme around that. Also, eating like it's summer. One of the things that I really love to do, especially in the colder winter months, is to eat pineapple. Again, it reminds me of Hawaii. It reminds me of warmth. It's something that's like bright in my mouth. And so when it's not so bright outside, to be able to eat something that reminds me of warmth and summer and sun and fun, it's just a nice little pick-me-up. So eating like it's summer. One of the things, these kind of next two things I'm going to talk about, organizing and updating and taking up a new hobby. For some people, organizing and updating is a hobby, and that's great. However, years ago, what I started doing was choosing hobbies according to the season, right? So I'm not out gardening right now. I could be. I mean, if I had the right equipment, I could be doing winter gardening, but I don't, and I don't enjoy being out in the cold. So, but I do really enjoy sewing, and I can sew in a straight line. And so this year I have taken up learning how to sew clothes. I've also taken up oil painting. Those are two things I never would have thought that I would be doing. I made a shirt, and I'm old enough to have had home economics in high school. I made a shirt with two left arms in high school. So really, it's probably, I didn't think that that was ever going to really be my calling. However, in taking some classes and learning how to read patterns, right, and doing some diligent study around this, I'm really enjoying this new hobby. This has given me something to look forward to in the winters when I'm not going to want to be outside, right? So picking up new hobbies that would be inside hobbies maybe, or taking up a new hobby that would be an outside hobby. Probably not here. We don't have lakes that freeze over, but my oldest son lives in Wisconsin now. And so he's taken up, I can't remember if it's called skiing. I don't remember. Anyway, it's a very different type of skiing. He's never done it before. He also doesn't really love the outdoors in the freezing cold, and Wisconsin is freezing cold. So finding a new hobby that is something that you can do, something that kind of lights your fire, something you can delve into during these cold seasons is really, really helpful. Taking the time to organize and update, like I said, for some people that's a hobby, but if it's not, now's a really good time to do that. You know, you're not going to want to be organizing and updating the inside of your home when we're having warmer weather. You're going to want to be outside. So taking the time now to do that so that you can have that nice space, so you can feel good in the space you're in, really important. Stretching your mind. Again, this could fall into that new hobby piece. It might also look like going to LCC and taking a class. It could be taking a class offline that's free. Signing up for, you know, some kind of thing that lights your fire. Celebrating an offbeat day. If you look online, you will see that every single day of the year is National Something Day. I should have looked up what today was, but I didn't. Today is National Something Day. You could look it up. You could celebrate it in some small way even. You know, they have National Ice Cream Day. Like I said, what we eat certainly interplays, but if you're not having ice cream very often, right? Maybe National Ice Cream Day, you take a trip to Salt and Straw and you splurge. Soaking in a hot tub, for those of us who really appreciate warmth, is really, really helpful. If you don't have a tub space at your home, then onsen hot springs is a space where you can go soak in a hot tub, or if you have friends who have a hot tub, or you could plan a trip up to one of the hot springs, right? But getting in some warm water oftentimes really helps people. Exercising regularly. This seems to be a really difficult one for people who experience SAD. Like I said, you don't really want to move. You don't really want to go do the thing, right? But even if you can start with a 5-minute walk out your door and back, that's going to give you, so walking for 5 minutes away from your place, that's going to give you a 10-minute walk, right? If you could start with that, my guess is in just a few days, you're going to feel better. And then that can lead to walking just for a few more minutes, right? If you walk out for 7 minutes and then you come back, now you're at 14, right? If you walk out for 10 and you come back, you're at 20. So you can work your way up like that, even just over a week. And 20 minutes daily helps tremendously. It actually also cuts your risk of dying from lots of things almost by 50%. I think it's like 47%. 20-minute walk daily. So regular exercise is key. It really helps our bodies. It really helps our brains. And then anticipating future fun times. Planning a trip for the summer, planning a trip to go see a friend, planning, this weekend, a friend of mine's having a birthday. I get to look forward to doing that. They don't have to be big things. Planning a date with your partner or your significant other. And then looking forward to that. Anticipating future fun times. I see lots of couples in my practice, and lots of couples talk about not wanting to lose spontaneity, whether that be with dating, could be with their intimacy. Nonetheless, planning things actually helps us anticipate them. And that helps us feel better. So for all those people who say, I don't want to put things on the calendar with my significant other, I would argue that when you put a trip on your calendar, you look forward to it, right? And so putting things on the calendar, whether that be intimacy or dates, or time out with friends, whatever it is, putting those things on the calendar then gives us the opportunity to look forward to those things. It gets us excited about something else in our lives. Finally, taking a deep breath. Meditation helps. Meditation is as effective in lots of things as medication is. So I tell people start with 1 minute daily. Okay, so even before you get out of bed to go to the bathroom, right? This is something else that you can build into your routine. You push your alarm, sit yourself up in bed and breathe for 1 minute. That's all I ask, 1 minute. You're going to have a million thoughts run through your head. That's totally fine. That's supposed to happen. The point of meditation is recognizing that you're having thoughts and coming back to your breath. That's it. It doesn't have to be any more difficult than that. If you can do that 1 minute daily, most days, you will feel better fairly quickly. Okay? So taking a deep breath, also important. Anybody else have anything else that they use to deal with winter blues, deal with SAD? No? Okay. All right. We've talked about a lot of these things. If you don't have a place where you can get natural sunlight within your workspace, that's where one of those lights would come in. Again, it's important that it's shining down instead of shining up or shining at. Making sure that you can kind of have some daylight in your day is an important thing. I focus on positive things to look forward to when the season is approaching, like football, movie night, or pumpkin spice lattes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's those little things, right? That make us happy. And so, yeah, being able to focus on the little things and knowing that they're coming. Right. Being awake and active during daylight hours when possible is really important. If you are somebody who is struggling with sleep, right? And then you find yourself sleeping later, especially like on weekends. I recognize most of us have jobs that we need to be at in a reasonable time during the day. But on the weekends, if you find that like you're sleeping really late and then you're just being left with a few hours of daylight, that's going to really shift that circadian clock and you're going to be in trouble. So I would recommend getting up at the same time every day. I know that's for some people, they're like, what? I get to sleep in on the weekends. It's my only time to sleep. Then I would say, let's look at like changing your sleep habits during the week. So you're going to bed a little bit earlier so that you can still stay on that circadian rhythm. I recognize that it is not possible for all people to be awake and active during daylight hours. Some people have swing or grave shifts that they have to pull. If you are somebody who's experiencing that, I would say, please, please, please speak to your healthcare provider or your counselor, therapist, because they can help with that. Okay, if you happen to be, or one of your loved ones happen to be part of that 10 million, that this is really severe, here's what I would suggest. Go to your primary care physician and let them know that you're feeling depressed. And if you can point to this has happened cyclically for a number of years, they can help you, okay? Antidepressants can help for sure. If you want to try all those other things first, great, but you got to try them. If you try them for one day and they don't work, that's not going to be enough. You're going to have to try them for a week or more. Okay. If you can't get that far, please get some antidepressants. I am not somebody who is like, woohoo, let's get medication. Sometimes it's really important. Okay. And it doesn't have to be a forever thing. Antidepressants can be taken cyclically. You can go off of them in the spring and then go back on them in the fall. You have to titrate on and off. Wonderful. However, they can help. They can be used cyclically. And they could provide you that little bit of lift to be able to get you to do the other things that you want to be able to do, like eat right and sleep and that kind of stuff. And I shouldn't say eat right, eat more healthily, okay? Stress management, that 1 minute of meditation really will help. Again, walking, talking with friends, those kinds of things with stress management. If you feel like you're doing those things and it's not enough, please call us. We can get you in for some counseling. Regular physical activity, again, like I said, start with 5 minutes. Walk 5 minutes out and then come back. You're already at 10 minutes. That's great. And then, like I said, if all you're doing these things and it's not helping, please come in. You may have some ongoing things that need to be dealt with. All right. I want to point out some things that we want to be careful of if you're experiencing SAD. Avoiding needless shopping. Our society would love us to continue to feel poorly about ourselves so that we can buy more things. It's really easy to do that when we don't feel good. Okay, so you want to be really careful about what you're purchasing. I always like to ask myself, is this something I need or something I want? All right. If it's something I need, that's one thing. If it's something I want, then I wait 24 hours. If I'm still wanting it 24 hours, then we can talk. Most times I'm not, I have forgotten about it, right? So asking yourself that question, is this something I need or something I want? Online shopping is very dangerous, yes. So making sure that you're asking yourself that question. Eating out of boredom or sadness, again, kind of taking a beat. Am I eating because I'm hungry? No, this just sounds really good. Okay, what can I distract myself with instead? My hobbies, talking to a friend, going out for a walk. What can I do instead? Yes, drinking a glass of water when you're hungry. That's a great plan. Yeah, lots of times those things are mistaken, and especially if we're not really in tune with our bodies, which most of us are not. Yeah, down in a glass of water when you're like, oh, I just want to eat something. Okay, hold up. That might actually just be dehydration. Could be boredom. Glass of water is probably a good start. Great, thanks for that. Delaying key major decisions. I do not mean delaying things that are important that like you need to make a decision on. A lot of that actually happens with S.A.D. People just kind of put things off. They don't really want to deal with them. So delaying key major decisions like that is really, you want to be careful about that, okay? But you also really want to be careful about not making snap decisions, right? If it's a major decision, not just kind of, oh, we're just going to do this thing just to get it done. Okay, so there's two ends of the spectrum there. We want to actually give some careful thought to things that are major decisions, but not delaying it too long, not kind of pushing it off. If you recognize that you're not getting texts from friends and you're not sending texts to friends, you're not making phone calls to friends, you're not getting together with friends that you usually would have been seeing, that you want to start paying attention, okay? If you're engaging in unusual behaviors, if you're somebody who doesn't typically overeat, doesn't oversleep, or you're usually, getting out and seeing those friends, if you have major shifts like that, major unusual behaviors, please seek some help. And then, like I said, sleeping far more or far too little. Those are things to be careful of also. All right. Okay. Here is our information. And I want to be clear about the 24-hour on-call services. If you are having a crisis, please call 911 or Cahoots. They will be able to help you in those moments. If you have called them and you have, a plan kind of set up and you are thinking, I really need to get in and see somebody, please give us a call. We are, one of us is on call 24 hours a day. This isn't, you're going to get counseling at 2 a.m. This is triage. Are you safe? Are you going to be okay until the morning? And then we'll get you in. All right. Are there any questions? We are at an hour. I'm happy to stick around and answer questions. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I'm going to stop the recording.